There's something deeply unsettling about encountering someone with absolute discipline. Not the performative kind that's announced on social media, but the quiet, relentless kind that operates whether anyone is watching or not. Someone who says they'll do something and does it without exception. Someone whose actions align perfectly with their stated values. Someone who maintains their standards regardless of mood, circumstances, or social pressure. This level of discipline is rare enough to be almost frightening to people who have never experienced it themselves. The ancient Stoics embodied this terrifying level of discipline. Marcus Aurelius rose before dawn every day to study philosophy, even as emperor when he could have done whatever he wanted. Epictetus maintained his philosophical practice and moral standards even while enslaved and physically disabled. Cato the Younger was so disciplined in his principles that he chose death over compromising them. These men didn't just talk about discipline, they lived it so completely that it became inseparable from who they were. This wasn't willpower or motivation. It was something far more powerful, a systematic approach to self-governance that made discipline inevitable rather than optional. Today, we're going to explore how to build this same level of discipline. The kind that makes undisciplined people uncomfortable, that makes manipulators avoid you, and that transforms you into someone whose word is absolute law, starting with the promises you make to yourself. The foundation of terrifying discipline is understanding that discipline isn't about feelings. It's about systems that make the right action automatic. Most people fail at discipline because they rely on motivation, which is an emotion that comes and goes. They wait to feel motivated before acting, which means their actions are inconsistent and unreliable. But the Stoics understood that feelings are unreliable and that true discipline operates independently of emotional state. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about doing what needed to be done regardless of how he felt about it. He didn't wait to feel like studying philosophy, governing justly, or fulfilling his duties. He decided these things were important, so he did them whether he felt like it or not. This separation of action from feeling is the first element of genuine discipline. Building this foundation requires creating systems that remove decision-making from the moment of action. You don't decide each morning whether to work out. You've already decided, and the morning is just execution. You don't decide whether to keep a commitment based on how you feel. You made the commitment, so you keep it regardless. Decision happens once, at a high level when you're thinking clearly. Execution happens automatically according to the decision. The practice involves identifying your core commitments and creating non-negotiable systems around them. If physical fitness is a commitment, you establish a specific workout schedule that happens regardless of motivation, mood, or convenience. You remove all decision-making from the moment. The time comes, the workout happens. No negotiation, no excuses, no consideration of feelings. This isn't rigidity, it's pre-deciding so that you're not constantly redeciding based on whatever emotions happen to be present. When people encounter someone who operates this way, it's genuinely unsettling. They're accustomed to people whose commitments are suggestions, whose promises are conditional on feelings, whose standards shift based on convenience. But you've eliminated that variability. You said you'd do something, so you do it. The consistency is almost inhuman, which is exactly why it's powerful. The second pillar of terrifying discipline is complete elimination of the gap between your stated values and your actual behavior. Most people are walking contradictions. They claim to value health while destroying it. They say family is important while neglecting it. They talk about integrity while compromising it constantly. This gap creates internal weakness and makes them easy to manipulate because they don't trust themselves. The Stoics were ruthless about eliminating this gap. When they said they valued something, they lived that value in every situation without exception. Epictetus taught that your character is revealed not in what you claim to believe, but in what you actually do when it costs you something. The disciplined person makes their actions match their values so perfectly that there's no gap for doubt, excuse, or rationalization. Building this requires brutal honesty about your actual values versus your claimed values. You might claim to value career success while consistently avoiding the difficult work that would create it. You might claim to value relationships while regularly choosing activities that damage them. The first step is acknowledging these gaps honestly rather than lying to yourself about them. Once you've identified genuine values, not the ones you think you should have, but the ones you're actually willing to defend through action, you create an unbreakable policy of living them. No exceptions, no special circumstances, no just this once. When you claim to value honesty, you tell the truth even when lying would be vastly more convenient. When you claim to value discipline, you maintain your commitments even when breaking them would go unnoticed. This absolute consistency gradually builds something remarkable. You learn to trust yourself completely. When you make a commitment, you know with certainty you'll keep it because you've proven it through thousands of small actions. When you state a value, you know it's real because you've defended it when it cost you something. This self-trust is the foundation of genuine confidence and the source of the discipline that scares others. People encounter this and it's disturbing because it's so rare. Most people's word means nothing, including to themselves. They make promises and break them. They set standards and compromise them. They claim values and violate them. But you've eliminated this inconsistency entirely. Your word is law, your values are lived, your commitments are sacred. This reliability is almost frightening to people who have never experienced it. The third element is mastering delayed gratification to a degree that seems superhuman. The modern world is designed to destroy this capacity. Everything is optimized for immediate gratification, instant entertainment, one-click purchases, same-day delivery, constant stimulation. Most people have lost the ability to pursue long-term goals that require sustained effort without immediate reward. But the Stoics understood that all meaningful achievement requires the ability to sacrifice present comfort for future benefit. Seneca wrote about how the wise person invests in the future, while the fool consumes everything in the present. Discipline at its core is the ability to do what's difficult now for benefits that won't arrive for months or years. Training your body today for health decades from now. Studying today for knowledge that will serve you throughout life. Building skills today for opportunities that don't yet exist. Building this capacity requires deliberate practice in choosing delayed over immediate gratification. Start small. Wait 5 minutes before eating something you crave. Put money in savings before spending on wants. Do difficult work before allowing yourself entertainment. Each successful delay strengthens your capacity for the next one. Then scale up systematically. Work on projects that won't pay off for months. Build skills that won't become valuable for years. Make investments in yourself that won't show returns for decades. The Stoics understood that the person who can delay gratification indefinitely has essentially unlimited power, because they can pursue any goal regardless of how distant the payoff. Marcus Aurelius maintained philosophical study throughout his life despite ruling an empire. The immediate gratification would have been to use his power for pleasure and ease. But he invested daily in wisdom, knowing the payoff was a well-lived life rather than any immediate benefit. This orientation toward the long term rather than the immediate is what creates disciplined action that compounds over time. When people encounter someone with this level of delayed gratification capacity, it's genuinely frightening. While they're chasing dopamine hits and immediate pleasures, you're systematically building toward distant goals. While they're consuming, you're investing. While they're seeking comfort, you're embracing difficulty for future benefit. The gap between you and them widens daily, and it's all because you've mastered the ability to sacrifice now for later. The fourth practice is embracing voluntary discomfort to build resilience and eliminate weakness. The Stoics regularly practiced voluntary hardship, sleeping on hard floors, eating simple food, enduring cold, going without luxuries. This wasn't masochism or aestheticism. It was training. They were systematically eliminating dependencies and building capacity to handle difficulty. Modern life is designed for maximum comfort. Climate control, abundant food, endless entertainment, soft beds, convenient everything. This comfort creates weakness. When you need comfort to function, you're enslaved to comfort. When difficulty arises, and it always does, you're unprepared and overwhelmed. But when you've trained yourself to be comfortable with discomfort, you're resilient and free. The practice involves regularly choosing the harder path. Take cold showers. Sleep on the floor occasionally. Fast periodically. Walk when you could drive. Carry things when you could use wheels. Do physical work when you could hire it done. Each voluntary discomfort strengthens your capacity to handle involuntary discomfort and eliminates your dependence on comfort. This also builds discipline directly, because embracing discomfort, when you don't have to, requires overriding the very strong biological impulse toward ease and pleasure. Every time you choose discomfort voluntarily, you're training the mental muscle that chooses discipline over impulse. You're proving to yourself that you're not controlled by the desire for comfort, which means you can pursue any goal regardless of how uncomfortable the path. Epictetus, who experienced involuntary hardship through slavery and disability, taught that we should practice voluntary hardship while we can, so we're prepared when involuntary hardship arrives. When you've deliberately trained yourself to handle cold, hunger, discomfort, and difficulty, you're not destroyed when life imposes these things on you. You've already proven you can handle them. When people encounter someone who chooses discomfort voluntarily, it's deeply unsettling. They're avoiding even minor discomforts while you're seeking out difficulty. They need everything to be comfortable and easy while you're deliberately making things harder for yourself. This signals a level of discipline and strength they don't possess and often can't comprehend. The fifth element is absolute accountability, never making excuses, never blaming circumstances, taking full ownership of every outcome. The Stoics believed that while we don't control external events, we control our responses, and we're completely responsible for those responses. This radical accountability eliminates the escape hatches that undisciplined people rely on. Most people are excuse-making machines. They have elaborate explanations for why they didn't keep commitments, why they didn't achieve goals, why circumstances prevented them from doing what they said they'd do. These excuses might be valid. Circumstances do interfere, unexpected things do happen. But excuses, however valid, don't create discipline. They create a habit of finding reasons why discipline wasn't possible this time. The disciplined person eliminates excuses entirely. You said you'd do something, so either you did it or you didn't. If you didn't, you don't explain why it wasn't your fault. You acknowledge you failed to keep the commitment, and you examine what needs to change so you keep it next time. This brutal honesty with yourself eliminates the psychological escape routes that prevent discipline from developing. Marcus Aurelius constantly examined his own behavior without excuse or rationalization. When he failed to live up to his standards, he acknowledged it plainly and considered how to do better. He didn't blame circumstances, other people, or bad luck. He took complete ownership of his choices and their consequences. Building this accountability requires catching yourself making excuses and replacing them with ownership. Instead of "I didn't work out because I was too busy," you say, "I didn't work out because I prioritized other things over it." Instead of "I broke my commitment because something unexpected came up," you say, "I broke my commitment and I need better systems to handle the unexpected." Instead of "I would have succeeded but circumstances prevented it," you say, "I didn't succeed and I need to factor circumstances into my planning better." This level of accountability is terrifying to witness because it means you can be absolutely trusted. If you say you'll do something, either it happens or you acknowledge clearly that you failed to make it happen. There's no murky middle ground of excuses and explanations. This makes you someone whose word has actual weight, whose commitments can be relied upon, whose promises are essentially guarantees. The sixth practice is maintaining absolute focus on your own path while being completely indifferent to others' opinions, judgments, or standards. The Stoics understood that most people are enslaved by the need for approval and the fear of judgment. This enslavement makes discipline impossible because maintaining discipline often requires doing things others don't understand, approve of, or value. Epictetus taught that the free person is one who cares nothing for what others think of their choices. You pursue your goals, maintain your standards, and live according to your values regardless of whether anyone understands, approves, or respects it. This independence from external judgment is essential for discipline, because discipline often looks strange, extreme, or unnecessary to people who don't share your commitments. You maintain a rigorous daily routine while others think you're being rigid. You avoid certain behaviors while others think you're being uptight. You pursue difficult goals while others think you're being unrealistic. You maintain strict standards while others think you're being too hard on yourself. All of this judgment and pressure could make you compromise if you cared about their opinions, but you don't. Building this indifference requires systematically reducing your dependence on external validation. Stop explaining your choices to people who ask. Stop justifying your standards to people who question them. Stop seeking approval for your commitments. Make your decisions based on your values and then implement them regardless of what anyone thinks. This doesn't mean being closed to feedback or believing you're always right. It means you evaluate feedback based on its merit, not based on your need for the person's approval. Valid criticism from someone whose judgment you respect, you consider it seriously. Judgment from someone who doesn't share your values or understand your goals, you dismiss it completely. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire in the world, which meant everyone had opinions about his choices. But he maintained his philosophical practices and moral standards regardless of whether anyone else valued them. He cared about his own character and judgment, not about others' perceptions. When people encounter this level of indifference to their opinions, it's unsettling. They're accustomed to social pressure working, to judgment affecting behavior, to approval and disapproval being tools they can use to influence others. But you're completely immune. You've separated your choices from their opinions so completely that their judgment has zero impact. This makes you unpredictable and uncontrollable, which disturbs people who rely on social pressure. The seventh and final element is living with such complete transparency between your private and public self that you're the same person whether anyone is watching or not. The ultimate discipline is being disciplined when no one can see, when you could easily cut corners without consequence, when the only accountability is to yourself. The Stoics believe that character is revealed not in public performance but in private action. What do you do when you're alone? When no one will know? When you could easily take the easy path without anyone finding out? These are the situations that reveal whether your discipline is real or performative. Most people have massive gaps between their public presentation and private reality. They perform discipline, health consciousness, or productivity when visible while acting completely differently in private. But this gap means they're not truly disciplined. They're just performing discipline for social benefit. Real discipline operates identically in public and private because it's not about performance. It's about who you actually are. Building this requires developing such strong internal standards that your own judgment matters more than any external observation. You keep commitments you made to yourself even when no one else knows about them. You maintain standards even when cutting corners would go unnoticed. You do the right thing even when the wrong thing would be easier and secret. Seneca wrote that we should live as if a wise person were always watching, but better yet, We should live according to our own standards, knowing that we ourselves are always watching. You cannot hide from yourself. You always know when you've compromised, cut corners, or failed to live up to your own standards. Discipline at its highest level is about satisfying your own judgment rather than anyone else's. When people eventually discover this consistency between your private and public self, it's genuinely frightening. They're accustomed to everyone having secrets, gaps, and hidden compromises, but you've eliminated all of that. You're the same in private as you are in public because your discipline is real rather than performed. This integrity is so rare that it seems almost superhuman. These 7 elements work together to create discipline so complete and consistent that it disturbs people who encounter it. You operate on systems rather than feelings, so you're reliable regardless of mood. Your actions match your values perfectly, so you're trustworthy completely. You master delayed gratification, so you pursue long-term goals others can't imagine. You embrace discomfort voluntarily, so you're resilient to difficulty. You take absolute accountability, so you're honest without excuse. You're indifferent to judgment, so you're unmovable by social pressure. And you're the same in private as in public, so your discipline is real rather than performed. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca proved this level of discipline is achievable. They faced every temptation to compromise, every pressure to relax their standards, every excuse to make exceptions. But they built systematic discipline so complete that it became who they were rather than what they did. You can build this same discipline. Start with one element and practice it until it becomes automatic. Create systems that make right action inevitable. Eliminate gaps between values and behavior. Practice delayed gratification daily. Embrace voluntary discomfort regularly. Take absolute accountability for every outcome. Become indifferent to others' judgments. Live identically in private and public. Over time, these practices compound into something remarkable. You become someone whose word is absolute law, whose commitments are guarantees, whose standards never waver, whose discipline operates whether anyone is watching or not. This creates a presence that genuinely unsettles undisciplined people, because you represent what they could be if they stopped making excuses and started making different choices. This is the Stoic path to terrifying discipline, not through motivation or willpower, but through systematic elimination of everything that makes discipline optional. Build it, and you'll understand why the Stoics commanded such respect,